Happy New Year. So, here we are, 2017.
Indeed.
3 months off of the heels of the release of your second short.
It is, Strange Days.
Let's just briefly touch on Strange Days. What is Strange Days? What were you trying to achieve with that film?
It was, I guess, like a lot of the ideas I've had, it's just an accumulation of different experiences and things I see that I've observed in terms of how people are changing over time, the way I see the world around me, I suppose, and one of those big things being the technology and how the culture of the Android device has changed a lot of things about society. A lot of, 5 or 6 years ago, you could walk out into the street and it would feel very different to the way it feels now, in terms of how you can access a lot of data very quickly and how people are more insular in their kind of their own bubble almost. So it was observing that through just living life, and sort of seeing some of those things within my life as well, and then taking those and that process of coming up with an idea.
Very horrifying presentation to it. There's a dystopian feel to your filmmaking in general, but particularly to that piece.
I don't know, I find that kind of subject, that kind of tone of story and world to set it in, I just find it more interesting. It just seems like, personally, I can explore in a way that I can't with a different kind of world that you're setting it in. Like you say, it's quite dystopian. It's almost like a post-apocalyptic environment where it's kind of everyone's sort of in their own little world within a world.
For someone who's socially quite adept, you almost seem like an outsider, like you're always looking in at a world that's maybe alien to you.
That is very true. I mean, I know lots of people, I know lots of people within different social groups, and I can dip my toes into all these social groups as and when I choose, and that's been the case even when I was at school. But I guess I always like to have the ability to sort of pull away from it all and just, not observe it, but just have my own space. I am a bit of a loner in general, but I'm quite happy in my own company, to a point. We all need to socialise with friends and stuff, but I'm very happy on my own most of the time. And I think I like having that freedom so that I don't necessarily belong to a social group. Like, I'm an artist, so I guess if I did have one, that would be it.
Yeah.
It would be as an artistic social group. But even within that group, I have friends within all different mediums of art. I don't know, I always keep a little bit of a sort of arm's length to it, or I don't want to get too deep into any group, because I think when I do, I feel restricted.
Well, you're stuck in an echo chamber.
Well,
you're only going to be restricted to a certain type of conversation, a certain...
Possibly. Like, I guess I feel like it can limit the possibilities. Like, I like freedom because I'm a creative person. I'm an artist at heart, and for me to do anything, I need to feel free, not just physically but mentally and emotionally free. Otherwise, that's when I get stressed, and when I'm stressed, I'm not as good at what I do. So, knowing I've always been a bit like that, a bit eclectic in who I know, and being able, to sort of play different roles within different groups, and not in a bad way, just in a way that I can feel more comfortable interacting with people.
You're not necessarily wearing different masks. I think we all get the genuine Lewis Martins, but you have to adapt yourself a little bit to, yeah.
Don't tell them no, carry on.
So who is Lewis Martins? I mean, outside of your art, where does Lewis Martins come from?
See, like, the question's hard to answer because you say, like, who am I outside of the art? And that's the first problem in me trying to answer it, because I can't separate those two things, because
you have a symbiotic relationship with your art, so
they're not two things. I can talk about them as two things, like my social life, my personal life, my work life. But they all really come from the same place. There's two kinds of artists, the way I see it, just my opinion, but there are people that are born with some kind of natural gift or natural way that their brain works that causes them to think and feel in a creative and artistic way. That's not something you can separate from, because it's integrated into everything you do, from your work to your social interactions to the way you look at people and the way you look at life. I'm in that camp, whereas like there are other artists who they create art, so you can say they're an artist because they create artwork.
Yeah.
And because they've learned the methods to do so, but it's not. They can switch it off, so they can separate it. Whereas I can't separate it, because it's like trying to. It's just everything that I am and everything I do comes from the core of the fact that I'm a creative person and an artist. So I can't really explain what's the difference. Do you know what I mean?
So I'll rephrase the question then. When did you learn to embrace it? When did you learn to embrace that part that is intrinsically you?
Sort of mid-ish 20s, I guess. I've been working in a corporate sort of administrative, project management, finance work kind of environment for several years, which I never really felt like was me. I never really felt like I was doing what I should do. I never felt like I was living a life based on what I thought I should be doing, because that's what everybody else does. But I never really. Something just felt wrong. It didn't feel like, I couldn't explain it. It's like there's a little niggling, something picking away inside that I couldn't quite figure it out. And then I started writing poetry just completely out of the blue, when I was reaching quite a low point within the job situation, because I didn't see any sort of. I didn't have any optimism for the future, because it felt a bit like a dead end, and it was a dead end going round and round.
Yeah. And
I just, one day, out of nowhere, I just wrote a poem about how much I hated the environment I was working in, and I felt really good. And it's a very small moment, but it's a massive moment in the context of where I am now, because I can kind of that was the moment where something had just been laying dormant in me for a long, long time that I'd neglected, and I just kind of reached the end of my tether, and it snapped, and then the door opened, and it's not, the door just keeps growing, and there's more and more that keeps coming from it, because it's me, because that's the real me that has been trying to get out for such a long time.
like a crack in the wall of your psyche that's allowing the thoughts you always wanted to escape out, not just to other people, but it's projecting itself into your photography, into your visual art, into your poetry, and then your poetry isn't something you've spoken a lot about before, yet it is a constant stream of your consciousness, and I want you to sort of address that.
It's a quick way of expressing certain things, and because it was one of the first things that opened the door up, there's a special feeling towards it, and it's not like I write every day, but if I feel something, then I generally write a poem about it, and it's storytelling really, and it's just telling a story with words rather than images.
It's a venting mechanism for you then?
Yeah.
Amongst other things.
Yeah, like, we get frustrated with things sometimes in life, and it kind of gets some of the crap out of your head, for want of a better word, like, that's what I felt when I first started writing it. I felt like I had so much junk flying around in my mind, and there was no way for getting it out, so it was just, everything was just so sort of pressured because there was no space almost. And then once I started writing it, it felt like a release, that the pressure was released, and it was an avenue to let that pressure out, I think. And obviously that led me to other things, as you know, like in my other sort of forms of work. But I don't really write it. I don't write it for any sort of big reason to sort of, oh look, here's this poet, he's cool, isn't he? I just write it. It's like, I just write it. I get a feeling, I get an idea, some words come out, and then I'm okay. That's done. It's like a daydream with words.
There's no feeling of frustration when you may choose to share that outlet with other people, and you maybe don't get the validation that a lot of artists expect, because I think a lot of artists produce their work to then go, hey, this is me, look at me, please at least nod and agree with what I'm trying to say with.
The reason I did it in the first place, because it just took over me. It was something that felt like the right thing to do, and I enjoyed it, and that's never really changed. And I don't, like, if I make a film or I do some photography or I write some poetry and I share it, and someone dislikes it, I don't really mind, because like, even if they like it or dislike it, it's just a reaction, like art, any form of art is subjective, and if you're a proper artist and you're honest about what you're doing, and you're doing it in that kind of soulful way, it's not going to be liked by everybody, because it's personal. It's you as a person being expressed through words or images, and no one is going to be universally liked. If they want to be, then that's a big problem for them, because they're never going to achieve that. So they're setting themselves up for a massive disappointment.
Yeah.
So yeah, at the start maybe I was slightly precious about what people said, because I was still figuring it out, and you get thicker skin. But I do it for me, and if people don't like it, that's okay. But if some people like it, that's also okay. So that's kind of my approach to it.
And again, it's for you and you alone. It's not a sense of you're seeking the validation. But if someone engages with it and they find some positivity in taking a journey through your art, then all the better.
Yeah,
But it was never made for them in mind.
In terms of the art, no. If I'm doing something for like a commission, if someone's commissioning something, that's very different. There's a different split to it. But obviously, I'm aware when I create something. Like I did a travel documentary called Walking the Earth, which was a lot of really, really old pre-professional footage, but I felt it was something I could put together later on in my career and try and tell the story of how I changed my life. And that film's reaction has been incredible. Out of all the things I've done, that's been something that's inspired a lot of other people to do, not necessarily change their life or go travelling, but just I've had so much really wonderful feedback from that, saying that people have felt it made them feel like the possibility of changing things is there, and it made it kind of more real.
This is it. It marks a transitionary point in your life when you went from being, a humble administrator to, I think, the person you wanted to be. You always were that person, but it's a case of figuratively breaking the chains and just allowing yourself to wander, which you certainly did. For a considerable amount of time as well.
I did. It does seem like it's kind of strange, because from time to time I watch my old work, not that often, just like very rarely, but watching like that in particular, it's very strange because it feels like 100 years ago. It's ridiculous. Only like 9 or 10 years ago I started the travelling. It was a 3-year period. It's not that long, but it feels longer because of so much change has gone on, not just in my work life, but in my personal life and my outlook and how I feel about myself, how I feel about what I'm doing. So it's a strange experience watching yourself during the times where you were changing from who you were to who you are now.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did record all those things, because it's really nice. Not many people would have the opportunity to share their experience in that way. You can write about it, you can talk about it, but actually seeing some of the elements of it.
So the memento of your rebirth, I suppose.
In a way, yeah. And
Memories of a place where I retraced footsteps in sand as it slipped through my hand, fueled by desolate beats as I walked through streets, unknown and far from home as the rumble of text on phone bristled through muscle, then bone. Distortion clouded my way to a new day as feelings of fright made my lungs tight. I fastened a seatbelt for a journey to a place I couldn't trace as the walls inside started to breach, flooded by past indiscretions and blackened reflections in mirrors shattered by dreams. It was the end of a beginning. In a slow motion waltz with sin and the sinner, I was no longer the beginner. The days came and went. The sun rose and set. I was home, standing at the front door, sand in my hand, trying to understand these memories of sand.
it's a nice memory, and it's kind of like rebirth is one way of describing it. It's kind of, yeah, it is. It's kind of, I've had two lives really. And it's like the second one started when I started understanding the creativity that I had, writing poetry, and then realising that I want to change my work environment, then going travelling, which was the next step, and then all the other things came just through time and experience.
Let's touch a little on that previous life. So Lewis Martins had to come from somewhere.
Some hole in the ground, I think.
Stick of the dump.
Yeah.
What's your lineage? What's the story in your family history that sort of maybe has in some way contributed to you becoming the Lewis Martins that we now know?
Well, there is a streak of creativity in the family. Some of my siblings have it, like, to an extent, like in different sort of more sort of arts and crafts, things like that, but they do have a strong creative streak. My mother, definitely, she's, well, not in her younger life, but in her later life, she used painting as a way of kind of releasing some of the sort of things she was having to deal with. It was like a sort of form of therapy for her, and it kind of unlocked that. So she writes poetry and she paints also. And going back a generation, there is there are creative people in the family to varied extents. So, like I was saying earlier, I was born with something there.
Yeah.
It wasn't taught. It wasn't manufactured. It was always in there, and it's just a case of whether you can actually hear it. You know, it's difficult sometimes when you live life and you get caught up in the grind of regular life, because the majority of people aren't artists, so
No.
they don't think the way an artist thinks. So all artists do feel slightly alienated in the mass sort of world because they are a minority, and only the other artists really can truly understand what they're going through or how they experience life. Because I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like not to be an artist, because I've never been I've never not been one, if that makes sense. So it's always been there, even to a lesser extent or more. So it is in the family, and I'm glad, because otherwise, God knows what I'd be doing. Just living in a box somewhere, otherwise still might be possible. You know, the career goes downwards. But
It's feast or famine, Lewis. Get used to it.
Yeah, he says, and it's ridiculous. Sweet. Anyway, but yeah, there's a history. There's a history of creativity running in the family, and I think out of all the family, I've probably grabbed it the hardest, and I'm really running with it, because why wouldn't I? Yeah, if it's made everything better for me, it seems crazy not to. You know, there's no other option. You know, I couldn't change. I couldn't just suddenly go back to be 9 to 5, sit in an office. Lewis, it's not something I could do.
No, because there's this sense of being trapped, a monkey in an elephant cage, so to speak. You're not where you're meant to be. That doesn't mean to say that you can't function in that environment. I think you're perfectly capable at doing that, but it's the desire to break out is so strong that it creates this force of pressure upon you that, if not dealt with sooner rather than later, you do begin to lose touch with what actually makes you really happy, and as kind of what's driven you to not just where you are now, but to create this sequence of artistic ventures over the years. So, talking of which, you made your first short film back in 2012. Now this is after your travel documentary, so let's talk about Le Pen 10. Where did the inspiration
God knows where that idea came from. Do you know what? It was, I did all the travelling, so I'd done these sort of little docu things, and then I thought, I don't really want to do any more of that right now. So I thought, let's just make a story up. So where did it come from? That's a really good question. It came from music, if I'm honest. A lot of the things I do come from listening to music, and then you hear the music and you start to see an environment or characters or things happening, and then you get more and more of these, and then it starts to become a wider image. So I was commuting into work one morning, and I listened to a song, and I was sitting on this train completely fed up with the fact that I was going back to work, and I just closed my eyes, listened to this music, and I just started to see this black and white world. With characters that where they came from, I'm not really sure, but that's kind of the first point where it came from, and then over a period of time I started jotting notes and doing storyboards and finding other music that would work with it to inspire the certain scenes, and then I would speak to friends and colleagues about possibly because I wasn't a director then.
No.
You know, I'd done documentaries, but I wouldn't say I was a film director. So this was my debut as something new. So I had to kind of see which of my friends or family were interested in being in it, and you know, if I knew any actors, could I get them involved? So
Yeah.
it was a long process to make it happen, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I made a lot of mistakes making it because I didn't know what the hell I was doing, if I'm honest. It's just completely just wing it. You get an idea and just run with it and see what
Do you
happens.
think it's the last time you'll use morph suits in a film?
Well, I don't think I have it anymore. I would have worn it today, obviously, but no. The reason I used that is because I didn't want that character to have a face,
Yeah.
and I had no understanding of green screen then, or how to digitize that kind of effect. So I just thought, what can I use that's going to make him kind of very just neutral, just like a black hole of a personality, and because it's a Nazi character as well, it kind of, you know, it fits sort of like, not that they wore morph suits, but you know, that it's this kind of like black hole of civilization that just consumed everything. So it's the German dialect is quite a hard language, and I felt I was looking for another alternative, and I thought it's black and white, it's quite noir. And I was going to see, I was sitting in a train station where the Eurostar was, and I was going to see friends in Kent, I think, at the time on a Sunday. And I was just sitting there and I thought, what if it's in French and then we can film some of it in France? Obviously just because I wanted to go to France on holiday, probably.
Yeah.
So that's literally how it happened, how it became a French language film. What do you think about that?
Well, it's not what I think about it, it's what our French audiences think about it. It's your first venture into proper filmmaking, so here you're presented with this opportunity to take your baby, so to speak, into the commercial world. So you could have taken it to film festivals, you could have taken it to all around the world, and you chose to sort of leave that.
I did.
And I think, is this your sort of protective nature over your work coming in again?
I don't know, I just feel like maybe I'm harsh on myself in terms of the standard. When I'm ready, when I feel like this is it, then I will. I don't know, like at that time it was like, I didn't necessarily have the motivation to put it into festivals at the time. The thing is, it's still something I could, it's just, I feel like there's something better coming. That it's a good film, but I can do better, and I think
This is it. It's trial and error, and an artist is his own harshest critic. So you're going to look back at that, especially since that was now 4 years ago, nearly 5.
It was, yeah. Time flies.
So yeah, time really does fly. We met at the time during the production of that film, and a matter of years later, you thought, okay, you're going to embark on another one. So you worked on Strange Days,
I did.
and again, this is a film where you haven't sort of jumped straight into the course of getting it involved in festivals for 2017, which makes me think you've got something planned for this year.
I do. Strange Days I definitely promoted more, as you can tell, it had more of a campaign, and it definitely reached out to a lot of people, and I've made quite a lot of very important contacts who didn't know I existed or didn't see my work before, so it achieved the aims in terms of that.
Well, for a film that attacks social media, I feel it only adds that it's promoted heavily on it.
I wouldn't say it attacks it, I'd just say it's dark, it's a dark film. There's dark humour in there, and it's a bit farcical in bits as well. I actually watched it 2 nights ago for the first time. Because I finished it 8 months ago.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it since. So I quite liked it actually. I thought it wasn't bad. And it's weird because like if you watch it, you can watch it for the film, you were involved in one of the days filming, but
yeah.
you only saw like a very small part. I saw every part from conception to conclusion.
Yeah.
It's too much for any one person, so that's why I don't watch them straight away afterwards. But yeah, it's interesting watching your work back like that. There was a couple of bits where I was like, oh, that could have been better, but in general, I thought it, you know, it was probably the best I could have done at the time. Incredibly low budget, you know, which restricts you in resources and time, and that's the big, you know, it's not so much resources. The more time you've got, it allows you to get the perfect moment. But if you're doing low budget and you're restricted in terms of how much time you can have from people, then it's, you know, you have to get it within a time frame. So
it forces creativity and imagination. You're then presented with the scenario of, okay, I have so much I want to achieve with this film with very little at my disposal, and it means you have to get inventive, which a lot of directors will take for granted now because they have teams of hundreds of people, they have you know, the visual effects department and so on, and Lewis Martins, as I know, really just has Lewis Martins and some close friends around him that you know, can help him along the way.
Yeah. I'd rather have a team of 100 people to, you know, I'd rather be sitting with my feet up and a cigar and like a cognac going, yeah. That.
Do we hear this? Do we hear this? No gratitude whatsoever.
No, look, you know, I can only work with what I've got at the time, and every so often I want to make a film, and if I haven't got the money, then I'll make it without the money. That doesn't mean like, you know, if you look at the credits on Strange Days, I think someone commented on it on social media saying, "Oh, who puts themselves on the credit 15 times?" And I went, "Me," because I did all those things. Like, it wasn't me being an arrogant so and so. It was just it was factual with, like, you know, cinematography, director, producer, editor, etc. You know, I do need to be I do need to be involved in all the elements, because if I'm going to make a whole overarching film, I need to be involved in everything, because each part is integral to that overall. But I'd be very happy to have an individual doing each of those, like not all of the roles, but the majority, and I can just oversee and kind of guide, and then I can focus on, you know, the directing and the cinematography more. Editing, I enjoyed like the first steps. It's just all the other, you know, the kind of the final bits that get quite tedious. So I'd like to just make a film where I can kind of come up with a concept and then just be involved in all the things as it's progressing.
Yeah.
And that will come. It's, you know, when there's a bigger opportunity, the right opportunity, which there will be. I look forward to that, because I don't sit and think, oh God, could I do a feature film with like 200 members of staff, like working within it? Like, I wouldn't be intimidated by it.
No, there's absolutely no question, because you're still guiding a concept of your own, whether it's, you know, you're on your own trying to pull 15 different strings at once, or there with 15 people around you going, right, Lewis, I've got this, and the next person says, I'll do that for you. So you speak about a feature film. Is this something that you're urging to?
It's a natural progression. You know, I've done a lot of 3-minute shorts, and I've done like 2 kind of mid-range fictional shorts, like 15-minute shorts, and I've done some longer documentary work. I'd like to make a feature documentary. I'd like to make a feature film. I'd probably, if I'm going to make a feature film, it would probably be something I've written. And there are things I've been writing on and off for a period of time, which I intend to finish this year. Because I think if I'm going to make a feature film, I'd like to have created the idea, because I feel like I could do a better job with it. If it's my first feature, if I'm making a feature film, it's my first one, I want to blow everyone's socks off with it.
Yeah.
I don't want it to just come out like, oh, that was nice. But, you know, I want it to be perfect. And it will be. It's just I need I've got the story in my head, most of it. It's just I need time to sit down for a couple of months and write it. And then when it's written, take it to people who can open doors to the finances and the backing, and then make it happen. That's why that's the most natural next step for me. Because once I'm through that door, I feel I can achieve anything because I've got the passion for it, and I have a lot of ideas and a lot of drive to create something, and given the opportunity and the resources, any film you see out there, I don't look at films and think, God, I could never make that. I could, and I will, and it's just a process of time, and I'm not in a rush. That's why it's going to happen. It's because I'm doing it in my own pace, and I'm learning.
You're not trying to force this, scenario into being.
No, I don't.
But your lab rats, your previous projects, the Penitent, and more recently Strange Days, have acted as and not just a learning process for you, because you've begun to understand the process of making a film much more in detail, but also that you have attracted the attention of people who might, be able to help you achieve that next step.
Yeah, the films I never made I think Strange Days I made more, I guess, not to be noticed, but to open up people's eyes, perhaps, because it was more of a topical subject matter than the Penitent. So there is a kind of an element of Strange Days being, it's not a product, it's still an idea and a creative film.
Oh, absolutely.
But there's a side of it that can appeal to more people because of what it's about. It's about something we all, to varying extents, understand. I think, it's a satire on the culture we're living in, and how, like you say, you and I, we can look at it from a different set of circumstances because we've experienced the before and the after.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, it's a weird world we're living in, and I don't think, is it good, is it bad? I can't really say. It's just different, isn't it? It gives me a lot of material. I've written a lot of poetry about it, because you go sit in a coffee shop, what are you going to write about? Look around you. It's just a bunch of people like glued to this little object. It's like they're brainwashed. So it brings on thoughts of kind of mind control and sort of those, those kind of like those sort of
but
concepts.
You're still able to be transient in this world. You're able to step in and out of it quite seamlessly, and I think a lot of artists can relate to that, in the sense that they don't really live in that world. They sit outside it, they watch it, and then they step into it, and maybe that's their opportunity to share their craft, or maybe that's their opportunity to put their finger on the pulse of this new world around them.
Yeah, I think artists at heart are all storytellers. That's what we do. It's whether it's our story or it's the story we see around us with other people involved. It's all something that we're trying to express in some way, and so like all artists are going to be influenced by the world around them. So it's not a surprise that you're seeing a lot of films and books and paintings and photography that have the feel of the way the world is going, into that kind of detached cyber generation, where we're more connected than ever before, and we're more alone than ever before, because we're in this kind of cycle where we create like a never-ending cycle of admin for ourselves, and we wonder why we never get through it, because everything we do creates another layer on top of it, and it's like we're never actually going to reach the end of this wheel we keep walking around. And I think it's a shame. I don't think it's a bad thing, social media. I think it can be very useful in terms of work and connecting with people.
Yeah,
I think if you use it in moderation, like anything, I think it can be beneficial, but I just think it's very damaging to a lot of people, because it can cause massive anxieties and depression, because if people are on there and they post things and they need this validation, they need people to like it and comment on it, because if they don't, they feel like it's somehow, like a negative on their character.
So I think this is something that we've both at times probably had to do, but I like to do it now as a sort of a regular journey away from it, and that is to literally just sort of consign a certain amount of time where you don't interact with social media at all. Maybe you still have your phone on you, you're going to answer texts and calls, because if Granny has fallen down the stairs, it's probably not a good idea that your phone's locked in the drawer. But you're having that sort of cool down period, so to speak, where you're just going to read, you're going to interact with people face to face.
Yeah, it's a balance. It's like anything. If you oversaturate yourself with one thing, it can take over your life.
Mm.
So, I work from home a lot, so if I'm at home, it's always there. There's some device on, so you're always connected. But I find when I go out, I generally switch off a lot.
Yeah.
Like I write a lot. Like I write poetry when I'm out in coffee shops, because it's a nice way of just taking yourself out of the bubble of the technology. But it's also good to just think about stuff.
Mm.
I think that's one thing that not just the young generation, but the old, like everyone who's kind of addicted to phones, everyone seems a little bit more stressed than they used to be, or a little bit more tired, or they never have time to process anything. And I think one of the most important things for me personally, and I'm sure for a lot of people, is it's just taking half an hour to sit down and have a cup of tea or whatever, and just process everything that's going on in your life. That's work, that's family, that's relationships, that's what's going on in the world. Because there's so much, and then you throw social media into that. You need to have a time to cleanse that kind of...
There's your answer. It's the fact that they're tapping into the lives of others and the world at large, and sometimes they do need to sit back and have that introspective moment of, okay, where am I? Where are my closest? And what's going on with me? What's going on with them? Rather than saying, what's going on halfway around the world in a place where I may have never even visited.
You can just get too much information, you get overloaded, and I think that's where we're at right now. And I'm not immune to it. I some days I find myself I never get anything done, because I'm just kind of like replying to emails or messages, or I'm posting this, and you just get caught in the spiral of it.
And there is another world out there as well, and it's a world that you've explored for a time. I mean, you travelled 3 continents.
Travelled all of them.
Travelled all of them. There we go.
Is there 3 or more than 3? I can't remember. It's the whiskey.
So you did a lot of travelling back in sort of mid to late 2000s. And you might have gone on sort of a select few trips since then, but I feel like Lewis is due for another wander.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's like I've been on holidays, yeah, sure, but I think it's been about just over 6 years since I came back from my 3rd and final trip. And I don't regret not having travelled in 6 years, because I knew that I needed to focus more on my life rather than because travel was just a mechanism for me to figure out a lot of things in my head, and who I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, and how I was going to do it. And I couldn't do that while I was at home, so being away gave me the space and the time to reflect and kind of understand what's in front of me and how I'm going to approach it. And then once I was in that place, I just, the last 6 or 7 years, that's what I've been doing. I've been changing everything and focusing on it, and it's worked. But I do feel like it's still in me to travel, because it's a great experience. You get to go to new places, which is fun. It's free. It's because I'm an artist. Maybe it's the freedom it gives you, and it's new material for photographs, for film, everywhere you look, and it's inspirational for poetry. You make new friends, and you're away from everything as well, so you get a chance to reflect on your life again, which I will do if I go again. You know, even though my life's very good now, I'm very happy. Yeah, I'm not sort of going to just sit and go, oh yeah, it's fine, I'm there. The end. There's always more, and you need to keep evaluating your life every so often, because we can all get complacent, and we can all kind of get too comfortable. So I definitely would like to go again. I will be going again at some point in the not too distant future. What I'll be doing, I don't know, but there will be some kind of art coming from it, because it's impossible for me to not. I can't not create something.
And this is it, and you've spoken about days where you'll, and though they might be few and far between, but you'll take your camera, you'll just go out for the day, doesn't matter where you're going, whether it's into the city, whether it's into the Surrey countryside, you're just behind the lens looking out.
True. However, I honestly, for the last couple of years, I haven't used my cameras as much as you think. Like, a lot of the work that I show has been recycled from the first 2 to 3 years of my career. Like, the last 2 years, I've made Strange Days.
Yeah.
I edited Walking the Earth. Honestly, the majority of other stuff I've done in the last 2 years has been commissions for clients or, organisations who wanted me to create something for them. I haven't used my camera out on the street for a couple of years properly. I haven't done concept photo shoots for a couple of years. I think because I kind of did so many in such a space of time to really sort of create what you see online in terms of my portfolio, and I needed to sort of just have a break from it.
This is because you oversaturated yourself.
Yeah, but I'm definitely at a point now where I'm motivated to do more. I've got a lot of ideas, and I'm making more of a concerted effort to make some connections with people to do some themed photo shoots coming up. Because photo shoots are not my most natural form of work. I'm a travel documentary photographer, which is travel, which is street photography, which is reportage. It's natural, and I've learned how to apply that to shooting people in a photo shoot scenario. But it's never been my most natural thing, unless I'm creating it like it's a film. A character, a scene. Then a photo shoot takes on more meaning for me. So that's why when I do some soon, they're going to be more with people that have a lot more of a character, possibly like a performer or something like that. So there's conversations currently ongoing, and I'm hoping that they will come to fruition, and we'll be seeing some interesting photo shoot work, and then some travelling as well, maybe a feature film.
Maybe.
Travel documentary. You're coming up with concepts and ideas, and it's like little flashes keep going off in the room, little tiny flashes of light, and you start to see little things under the light for a fragment of a moment, and then it's gone. And it's lots of these kind of flashes, and then you get ones where it lasts a bit longer and you see more, and then I guess what you're waiting for that one flash of light where you can see the whole picture. And there's no real definitive way of getting to that point. It's just time. It can be simple of what music you're listening to, conversations, things you see on the street. Anything can alter those kind of flashes. But then you will eventually get to the point where you see what you're going to create, and then you create it. But it's not, you can't force that to happen. Before you get to the idea, you get about 20 or 30 ideas.
And this is it. Does that sometimes frustrate you? I mean, like, I can relate to that in the sense that, I'll get a fragment of a melody begin to form in my head, and I'll think, okay, that's, so where can I take that? And within a day, something new finds its way in.
I wouldn't say it's frustrating. It can be, because you want to, I like sharing the concept, so I'll often randomly text one of my friends going, oh, I've got this idea, and then 2 weeks later that idea's in the bin. So So that can be frustrating because you do just want the idea to be right, but
Yeah.
it's a process. It's like it's a journey, and the end point is the idea that you're going to work on, but you can't get there without this going through the stepping stones of the other ideas, because the other ideas may not work, but they may open up ideas further down the line. It's like chain reaction of thoughts leading to other thoughts. So it doesn't annoy me. Obviously it would be great. You wake up, you go, oh, that's my next film, done. You put your feet up, and then you can just lounge around all day. But it comes to you over time. So I'm kind of at peace with the process. I just let it come to me. This is my approach to life, really. I take life as it comes. I'm quite laid back, but it's not in the respect that I do nothing. And just I try and do what's right for me. I make the decisions that I feel comfortable with, that fit with who I am as a person.
It's organic, and it's not forced to create something that you feel needs to happen. It's just going to happen as it is.
Yeah, because that's art.
Yeah.
Art isn't manufacturing. Manufacturing is, you create a product for an audience to make money.
Yeah.
A lot of art does make money, but real art is not about money. It's about expressing your part of your soul in some kind of form, whatever that form may be. Whether you're a musician or a filmmaker or a photographer or a painter or anything. What are we all trying to do? We're trying to get something out that's inside us in a way that we can be happy with, because it needs to be shared, even though I don't personally think about how it's going to be perceived. Artists are few and far between, and if you take the artists out of the world, it's going to be a very bleak place. So art is very important for a lot of people, not just other artists, but people that aren't creative, because art can inspire other people in many, many different ways. So I think it's a duty of an artist to get their work out there. Whether they care what people think, that's not the point. It's just art's important, and artists...
You've heard it here first. Art is important.
Art is important.
Art is important, yes.
Because like I said earlier, artists are maybe 1% of the world. We're all told that we can all be artists these days, but it's really, we can all learn how to create things, but there's a difference between being born that way.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think if you've got it in you, you're very fortunate, and you need to embrace it and sort of take it as far as you can, because you only really get one life as far as I'm concerned.
Do you feel at the moment you're probably better equipped to explore it to the fullest extent because you're unattached, you're in your early 30s, and you've sort of accumulated resources and connections over time, whether that be from working commercially or whether it be from working on your own projects and then sharing those with other people. By the way, ladies, he's unattached. There's no ring on that finger. So.
I feel like I've morphed into some kind of dating app scenario here. It's quite nice. Do I have to press
it's a really expensive version of Tinder.
Yeah, do I have to press a button? Right, hang on, that one. No. What's the question again? You flustered me now.
Do you think you're in a better position now to really allow your art to flourish? Because you consider what it would be like if you had a wife and 2 young children by your side.
I don't think if I had a wife and 2 kids it would be a negative right now. No. I just don't think it's not. I would have had them if it was right for me right now. I'm not closed off in that respect. Anything can happen in the future, and I'm very open-minded. I'm in a great place to create because I'm happy.
Yeah.
And how you make yourself happy is different for me, you, other people. It can be your career, it can be having a partner, it can be having children, it can be all sorts of different things. So as long as I stay happy in myself and I can be free to express myself, the social scenario around me doesn't necessarily matter as long as those social elements don't change the infrastructure for me. You know, like I said previously about I'm involved. I know a lot of social groups, but I don't belong to any.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I don't like people. It doesn't mean I don't want to be involved. It just means I need to not have a leash, if that makes sense. I need to be able to wander and explore and be trusted to do so creatively or just in general. Because as soon as I start to get walls built around me, that's when I start to. It's not a good environment for me, you know. I think because I'm an artist, because everything I do comes from it, and I'm very creative, and I need the freedom, not just to create my work, but to feel happy in myself. So, as long as, you know, if I had a wife and 2 kids, and I had that environment around me where I felt that freedom as well, then it wouldn't mean I wouldn't be able to create. You know, it would just be another circumstance of life that would be positive. So there's no kind of guideline to what's the best way to create art. I think it's just being happy, and if you're happy, you're going to be expressing yourself more. Because artists are generally happiest when they're doing that. If you take an artist and you take away their art, they're not going to last very long.
No.
I don't think. So it's necessary. It's like breathing, you know.
I bring that sort of idea of family up because you're likely to, especially if you go on to feature, you're talking about travelling around the world, not just to share your work, but to actually create it in the first place. Particularly as a travel documentarian, you know, a life on the road.
This is true. It's challenging, but nothing in life is easy. And I believe if you absolutely are convinced that something is right for you, you can make it work. If you have 1% of doubt, it will fall and crumble. And yeah, being a feature filmmaker and a documentarian in the future, it would require a lot of work in places for periods of time away from, if I did have a family at that time. Yeah, of course that's something I consider, but anything can happen in the future. So I don't worry about, I never really worry too much beyond the immediate now. I don't see the productivity of it, because it's all just theory. You know, I can theorise about 1,000 different alternatives and what's going to happen in the next 6 months of my life, and I do, because that's how my mind works. But it doesn't really change the future, because I don't know what's going to happen in 15 minutes, an hour, 2 days, 6 years time. It's all just.
I think we know what's going to happen in 15 minutes time. We're just going to get another drink.
No, so yeah, I don't worry a lot. I just live life and live in the moment and enjoy it now.
Yeah, and flow. Yeah.
And create within that.
What influences can you call upon as sort of the primary drivers in your filmmaking? What sort of has developed that particular style that seems to be forming now?
In terms of the style, I wouldn't say I've been influenced by other filmmakers in terms of how I capture things, in terms of a cinematography. That's just, I look at what's in front of me, and I place the camera in the way that I feel works best.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily copying or influenced by anyone. In terms of what directors, I guess, that influenced me, when Scorsese was a director I watched a lot of Scorsese films when I was growing up. Mean Streets was one of the first ones that I ever saw, with like a very young De Niro and Harvey Keitel. And one of the elements of that I really liked, which you can probably see in a lot of the work I do, is I always like the narration. I like a story where there's a voice over the story, like someone's telling the story, or you're in a monologue.
Yeah.
Because in that film there's a Harvey Keitel character he hears his own, he's got this voice in his head where he's kind of talking to himself about things that are going on. And we all do that, and I find that quite interesting, having an inner monologue audible so people can kind of hear it. That's something that influenced me, I think.
I think it harks back to the days of noir filmmaking, and particularly the private investigator, the Philip Marlowes of this world. And I think we saw that in The Penitent.
I think so. However, like, I'll be completely honest, you know far more about that genre and that kind of era than I do. Like, I just nod and go, oh yeah, Peter, I know what you're talking about. I don't know anything about it. But it's funny how stylistically The Penitent came out in a way that relates to that, and the kind of new wave French noir stuff. But it wasn't. I've never actually seen any of that stuff. I've never, like, before I made it, I never really. So it wasn't an influence. It was just something that So whatever the people who did that had, I have as well. In terms of style, visual style, or how you want to portray something. So it's. Maybe I was French in a former life or something like that.
I think I need to send you some Humphrey Bogart videos this evening. Just a little bit of an education. But
maybe like DVDs or even like, MP4s. That's what we use these days, isn't it? Yeah. VHS, gosh.
Don't even talk about the old formats. It's I feel like I'm clutching onto this fading memory.
Speaking of VHS, another director, Cronenberg.
Yeah.
He's one of my I just really like the style of his films. Like Videodrome was a film I watched when I was younger, and I wouldn't say it's my favourite film he's made, but it's just the kind of the surrealness and the weird nature of it, and how he kind of things within the world come alive, like technology or objects are living and breathing, and there's a lot of kind of, I don't know, it's quite erotic, a lot of the films he makes, and like very sort of like about flesh and kind of machinery, and he did, what was that? Was it Crash, that one, the controversial one about like people who kind of eroticized car crashes?
Yeah.
So he has this thing where like this eroticism of machinery and humanity like colliding, and I don't know, I find that interesting. He's definitely one of my favourite directors.
I think we saw that surface as well in Strange Days. The not just the sort of blurring of reality with this kind of other world, but how technology played into that, and how she was tormented partly by this faceless character, but partly by the phone itself.
Technology, I don't know, you can use it in many ways creatively. It's like, I like the kind of part where she's trapped in the phone. But just the intro, that's one of my favourite moments in the Strange Days film, like where it's just the piano, the ambient kind of weird piano music comes in, and it's just a girl's hand with a phone, and the battery meter is just kind of fading to nothing, and she's kind of trying to get out. It's just symbolic of how we're tied to the life of our phones. And once the battery's gone, it's like we feel like our life is over, because that's like the virtual world has become more real than reality, whereas it's completely opposite. But we spend all our time on them, and then when we talk to people in real life, we're so mentally distracted by the device. It's like we feel like this is the dream, the real dream, and we want to get back to the reality of the fictional virtual world.
So we spend too long nurturing our digital avatars and not ourselves.
I'm not going to give you 2 pills now, okay?
We are sitting in your room in armchairs.
That sounded terrible, didn't it? Let's take the red pill. No, Matrix, that's another. I wouldn't say that influenced me, but I liked the concept of how they used technology. I think it's influenced by the kind of Orwellian storytelling, but used it in a more modern.
I think specifically
modern way.
William Gibson, because you look at him as an author and what he did in the early 80s. Actually, in 1984, around that time, he creates this series of books that influence that Matrix trilogy of, in the future are the machines going to essentially be our masters, and maybe that's what was suggested. Certainly in the film, maybe we could all say that we are in some way enslaved by technology, as I look over my phone to see if it's ringing now, but
we are slaves to technology, because not just in the terms of the culture that we've been talking about, but everything we use and everything we have in the world is almost reliant on technology now. So we are merged with technology, and I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it's only going to become more integrated. And I guess Cronenberg, like we were saying about influence, I think he's the kind of had a foresight of it, how the two will have been merging over time and will, and it's kind of like we're almost embracing it and eroticizing the blend between human and machine. And it's only a matter of time before we do kind of the lines between the two become hard to separate. I've always been drawn towards more kind of bleaker stories, not necessarily depressing stories, but stories where it's like people are at the bottom. And I don't know why, but I feel like I can express that world better. Maybe because I've experienced that environment in my sort of earlier life, and through working in places where I was very low, so I kind of like I've been up and down on it, so I can recall what that world's like. Maybe that's why I like telling those stories, because I feel like there's a bigger range, and it's cooler, I think, making a sort of a darker story with more menacing characters, and I always feel like I can do more with it in terms of where I can take the characters, how deep into their own soul can they go, because that's probably the most interesting place. The troubles we have in life make us more interesting, I think.
I feel like that's espousing some sort of Taoist philosophy of embrace the light and the dark in order to find your balance, and I think you do explore the dark more often than the light.
I do think so. I think in fictional stories, yes, definitely. I think in the kind of documentary stuff, it's more uplifting, because it's been based on artists and the kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But even within there, like a lot of artists have that. Sometimes it takes a dark moment to open the doorway to something. But yeah, in the fictional films, I do feel like I can get more out of it. I can. But you don't want it too dark. There's got to be some kind of curve to it. Otherwise it's going to be completely depressing. I was going to want to watch it. So
I think that's maybe why A Strange Days works as a story, in the sense that it is a very bleak concept. Yet you intersperse a degree of humour into it. Some of it quite coarse. Anyone who's watched it will know what I'm referring to. But
and I think is it the C word?
Might be.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't me saying it.
No,
it's the character.
Hold no responsibility.
Yeah.
Do you feel that, having been a journeyman before, someone who walked the earth, that in future filmmaking it's something that you want to take abroad? Is because all of your filmmaking really has been sort of focused in this country, aside from obviously the travel documenting. So in terms of fictional storytelling, is it something that
yeah,
like to do
without doubt? Like I said, I'm writing there's a couple of ideas I'm working on, screenplay ideas, but the main one is not set in this country. it's set in 2 different countries, so, and they're not in England, so yeah. The short answer to that is
That's
yes.
ambiguous.
Yes.
Good.
Obviously, they're probably places I've been to because I've travelled, all over the world, and there's so many interesting places to visit. And it makes sense for me to be working in other countries as well to film, because it's part of my heritage of who I am today. Travel and being in different places. So it's inevitable. But I'm going to be doing. I will make a feature film that probably won't be shot in this country. It will be shot somewhere else, where that will be revealed over time. But there's I have probably like 4 or 5 films in my mind that I'd like to make feature films. Like whether I ever do, that's another matter. But they're kind of there. But I couldn't do certain ones until I've done the first one. The first one is the flag in the sand saying, "This is what I do," and I'd hope that would get me recognised and the opportunity to do other stuff.
Yeah.
And then if I do get that opportunity, I've got 3 or 4 that I would like to do. So I'm more of an indie filmmaker, but I would like to cross over into mainstream, bigger budgets. It's just the balance of trying to keep the artistic integrity intact. But I'd like to try both,
And it's also it's finding the way across the river in the first place. I mean, you've spoken about the valuable contacts you've made over the years, but let's say that really the core of filmmaking today is West Coast, United States. And you've been there and you've had work published there, so
it's inevitable that there's connections out there, and it's possible like my avenue in would be to co-produce something maybe with like a person who has the profile to make a project happen. That would be something that maybe would be an opportunity that I'm looking at. But first step is to get the screenplay that I'd like to do finished soon, and then that's the ticket, I guess, and get the funding to make it happen. Because I think it would be the best thing I've ever made. I've already seen the film in here.
Yeah.
And it's good, I think. I'd like to think so. It's just I need to express it in words, write the story.
And do you feel now that you're in the position to drive headfirst into making those projects more whole?
I do. Strange Days was quite an intensive project to work on, but I enjoyed it, and it's kind of wrapped now, I guess. It's still like bits and pieces, but it's done, and I haven't started anything new, working on some mini things, like to keep me entertained, like creatively, but there isn't a big one. The big one is that, because that's the one that's got the potential. So in the next few months I will be locking myself away somewhere to make it happen.
Okay, so in light of the journey you've taken up to this point now, the things you have planned for the future, do you think that Lewis Martins is someone who has a lot yet to reveal to the world, in terms of not necessarily the things he creates, but of who he is?
There's a lot of things to be revealed, some of which will be, some of which won't be. I think, I'm quite open within my work. There's a lot of me within all the things I do. But there will always be a part of you that you keep sacred for yourself and for your inner circle. You have to draw the line somewhere. But I'm not finished by any stretch of the imagination. I've got so much more to grow and learn. Therefore, I'm going to change through time. And when I'm changing, the work I create will change, and how there is a lot more to come. I'd like to think so. If there isn't, then this is the.
Then we're stuffed. This is it. This is
this is my swan song. It's all over. It's all downhill from here. But no, I feel I have a huge amount to offer. I feel I'm always learning, and I'm never going to stop learning. So I'm constantly going to be developing my work from now till the end of my days, because I don't see a time where I'm not going to be doing this at all, because it's so integrated into my life. Like you said earlier, you asked me a question separating Lewis the artist and Lewis the person.
Yeah.
There is no separation, it's the same, it's one and the same. So by the very nature of me living and existing and having experiences, I'm going to develop not just as a person but as an artist, and the work that I produce in the future will be a result of those experiences. So I can't say what they're going to be, but all I can say is that I will give my absolute all to it, put all of my heart and soul into everything I do, because that's why I love doing this job, because I genuinely care about it and I genuinely want to achieve excellence in what I'm doing. So I don't cut corners, I don't just go, okay, that will do. It's perfect, or it's not finished.
It's personal, so it has to be perfect.
Perfect in the sense of at the moment, because that's why I would never go back and re-edit one of my old films, because at that moment that film was perfect for me then.
Yeah.
Now I can look 2 years back, but I'm different, so I will look at it with different eyes. So I think just do the best you can in those moments, and that's, if you've done that, then there's nothing to regret. If people love it, that's amazing. If they hate it, then there's always whiskey. So on that note,
Thank you very much, Lewis.
Go for a drink.